Hello, and thank you for listening to the first episode in the new Sports Heaven podcast series, Afternoon Delight. Today, I am your host, Tyler, and we have two guests, Jacob.
How's it going?
And Joel on the phone.
Hello.
So the first topic we will be discussing is the MLB playoffs. Currently, there is a game going on, which is, I think, Game 4 of the MLB playoffs, which is the Kansas City Royals at the Toronto Blue Jays. So, Joel, what do you think of this American League Championship Series between the Kansas City Royals and the Toronto Blue Jays?
Well, in the last couple of days, there's been a lot of runs scored. Obviously last night's game was extremely high scoring. Toronto came on top. But, so far today, at the time of this podcast, they're in the third inning, and the Royals are already up 5-0. So, there's a lot of offense, not a lot of pitching. R.A. Dickey didn't even make it 2 innings, but he gave up 400 runs, 5 total. But so the way this game's looked, it looks like Kansas City's going to hang on here. And that said, they'd be heading back to the K for Game 5 with a chance to clinch and go to the World Series on back-to-back years.
Well, these games haven't been very predictable lately, so I think it was when it was Game 1, Kansas City exploded in one of the later innings to win Game 1, and then Toronto exploded in Game 3 in the later innings as well to win Game 3, and the games have been very... have had a lot of different lead changes. Jacob, what do you think of all the offense in the series? Is it just because these two teams are really offensively have an offensive gift in their lineup, or is it their pitching just isn't living up to expectations?
Well, I think there's some questionable pitching going. So, for example, R.A. Dickey, I'm kind of surprised he made the Blue Jays, rotation, given that he almost had a 4 ERA throughout the year. I know the Royal staff is not particularly, the Blue Jays staff is not particularly deep all around, but R.A. Dickey's been inconsistent at best this whole year. There's been games where he's just been blown out early, and then, there wasn't much to look forward to for this game, especially knowing how good the Royals are and how experienced they are in the playoffs. So I'm kind of surprised about R.A. Dickey being in the lineup.
Is it surprising to you that Johnny Cueto got lit up yesterday?
No, not at all. The Blue Jays are really stacked. They have they scored it was a ridiculous amount of runs they scored this year. I don't have the exact number, but they were well over 150 more than the next best team. So they can put runs on the board easy. So not surprising at all. So
can I get both of your picks for this AL Championship Series? Joel, Kansas City or Toronto?
It's hard to pick against a team that's up 3-1. Like you said, the struggles of Johnny Cueto are a little bit surprising, especially after he won the clinching game, I believe, Game 5 against the Astros. He only gave 2 runs in 8 innings for that one, so it's been really surprising he's kind of fallen off like this. But I've got to go with the Royals regardless. I think they've been there, they've shown that they're more experienced and they're more equipped for this setting, per se. So, like I said, if they hang on to win today, it's hard to see them losing a game at Coffin. So I think they're going to advance to the World Series.
And Jacob?
Yeah, I agree. I think the Royals are going to take this. They always say good pitching beats good hitting in the playoffs, and we're seeing that here with the Blue Jays. They were a good hitting team all regular season, but once you face some tough pitching in the playoffs, offense goes out the window.
I'll also take the Kansas City Royals out of who look to have a 3-1 lead after this game. So let's move on to the National League Championship Series. There was a kind of a surprise this year. The Chicago Cubs are facing the New York Mets, and Game 3 will be happening tonight at Wrigley Field, where the Cubs try to respond to losing 2 games in New York. The starting pitchers for tonight's game will be Jacob deGrom and Kyle Hendricks. So it's kind of a more of a lopsided pitching matchup towards the Mets, but we'll see if the Cubs can take out some bats in their lineup and get to deGrom early. So Jacob, we all know that you're from Chicago here. So what do you think of the game that's going to happen tonight?
In my unbiased professional opinion, I think the Cubs are going to win. I think that for a couple reasons. One, Kyle Hendricks has been pretty hot. He came into the season not expecting too much as a second-year player, but he did fine. His ERA a little bit was inflated from a poor second half, but he settled down towards the last 3 outings of the season. He had 3 straight consecutive quality starts. The Cubs are 2-0 against deGrom this year also, so I have a good feeling that Madden will put some magic together, and this team will know that they're in a desperate situation and will take control of the game and blow it open early.
And Joel, what's your take on the game tonight?
Well, let's look at it like this. The Cubs scored 3 runs in the first 2 games of this series with their 2 best pitchers, Jake Arrieta and John Lester, on the mound in those 2 separate games. Now they've got Kyle Hendricks starting at home. Not the guy who they would really prefer to have. However, it's at Wrigley Field, and they won both games against the Cardinals in the division series at Wrigley Field. It's really, if anyone has a home field advantage, besides the Toronto Blue Jays this postseason, it's been the Chicago Cubs at home. Yes, there's other teams that have been starved, but it's really, you have to understand, obviously the way the Cubs, Jacob for sure agrees with me on this one, the way the Cubs fans have been cheering this season is unlike anything we've seen in a few years, because the excitement there is, they haven't had something like this since 2003 at least.
Yeah, it does seem like the Cubs have a definite home field advantage so far in these playoffs. So going into Chicago, the Cubs are down 0-2. Do you think they can take games 3 and 4 in Chicago to even up the series?
Personally, I think they can. I think it's certainly going to be tough, though, because it starts tonight against DeGrom, who's had a fantastic postseason so far. The ERA is at 138, so it's going to be tough. DeGrom's probably, I guess I would say, besides Matt Harvey, the best pitcher on the New York Mets staff overall. So this one's not going to be easy. I have a feeling the Cubs are going to grind out like a 2-1 win, though, or something. Surprisingly, all these games in this series haven't been very high scoring yet. We did talk about the pitching styles for both of these as being a huge part of their success, but look at both of these teams' offenses, for crying out loud. The Cubs, their youth, Anthony Rizzo, Chris Bryant, Kyle Schwarber, and the Mets, obviously with David Wright, Curtis Granderson, Yoenis Cespedes, and so forth. I was expecting a little bit more offense. I don't think it's going to come tonight, but it's going to be coming pretty soon.
And Jacob?
Yeah, I agree. I think we're due for a nice big scoring game. However, I don't think that's going to be this game. I think that's going to be next game, Game 4, which is supposed to be the rookie for the Mets, Steven Matz, versus Madden says right now Jason Hamill. I know Matz is a rookie, and he could easily get a little bit, falter a little bit just in the hype of the moment. I know Jason Hamill's had a rough second half, posting an ERA near mid-5 for the second half of the year. So it's I think if there's any game that's going to blow out and get a high scoring, it's going to be Game 4. I think for this game tonight, I don't see it being high scoring. I think Hendricks comes out and performs well at home, as he has been for the last couple of weeks, and I think DeGrom does what he does and limits the Cubs to a couple runs. I agree with your prediction, probably around a 2-1 score or 3-2 score, with the Cubs winning.
Very nice. So let's get your predictions on the series. Jacob, I think we all know what you're going to say with even if the Cubs are down 0-2, just how many games do you think the Cubs are going to have to take to win this?
I think Cubs win 4-2.
4-2. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm talking about the series.
So 6.
So 6 games? Okay. And Joel?
I got the Cubs in 7. I think the Mets are going to squeak out one more win at home, but I've got that feeling that Chicago's got the advantage in this series. There's something going on with that team. I've said to you guys a few times. I just got that feeling. They're going to bounce back. 2, I think they're the better team, honestly. I think the regular season record proved that, but it depends how they're going to do against the Mets' best pitchers, because starting tonight, obviously, they got DeGrom, and it's not going to get any easier from here.
Yeah, I would agree. I kind of think the Cubs have a better team than the Mets, but I think the Mets are playing a little bit better baseball right now. I think the Mets are going to win in 6, splitting the series in Chicago 1-1, and then losing a game in the game back in New York, but then winning again in Chicago in Game 6. Then let's move on. So Daniel Murphy is actually going to be a free agent from David Murphy. Thank you. David Murphy is going to be a free agent from the New York.
No, it's Daniel.
It is Daniel Murphy is going to be a free agent from the New York Mets this offseason. He has posted some great stats over his career and has also been a very flexible player for the New York Mets. He has 140 hits this season, has 38 doubles, 14 home runs, and has driven in 73 RBIs. He's one of the core pieces to the New York Mets lineup. So do you think that the Mets are going to have an effort to re-sign him in the offseason?
It's sure going to be tough, to say the least, because, he's been an extremely steady player in his time with the Mets. Since 2011, his average has not dipped below 281. and he's consistently hitting at least around 10 home runs each year, driven in 50-plus RBIs. It's not to mention his defense, very solid defender. Not a gold glover fight, but he's worked out pretty well there. But, you get through arbitration, he was getting paid, not arbitration, his current contract, it was just a 1-year, $8 million deal, but he's going to be 31 next season, an unrestricted free agent. It's going to be tough for the Mets to bring him back because you have to wonder if they're more set on bringing him back or locking up Yoenis Cespedes to a big deal. But both of those guys are near the 30s, so it's something that can become a little bit more gray. But personally, I think they're going to bring back Murphy. I think they're going to lose Cespedes, though. To me, it's kind of like a one or the other kind of thing.
Yeah, both players seem to be fan favorites down in New York, especially Cespedes after kind of carrying this team through the last couple months of the season after they traded for him at the July 31st trade deadline. So do you think Danny Murphy will get a qualifying offer from the New York Mets, that being said?
It's going to be tough. I think they're going to try to give him one, but frankly, they're more intelligent to offer him a multiple-year contract. To prove their loyalty with him. I mean, the guy's hit 5 home runs this postseason already. We're not even done with the NLCS. I think he's worthy of maybe at least a 3-year deal. That kind of depends on what he's looking at. But whenever he's been asked about it right now, he said he's not concerned, and he has no reason to be concerned with it. He's in the middle of the playoffs. He's up 2-0 in the NLCS with a chance to get to the World Series. So this is the kind of thing we're going to have to see how this develops in the offseason. But I would be surprised if the Mets don't bring him back. I think they need to keep him in the lineup.
Yeah, he has definitely been a force this postseason so far. Another kind of big free agent name this in this series has been Dexter Fowler from the Chicago Cubs. He's set to become a free agent this semester. There's been a lot of speculations the Cubs aren't going to try to re-sign him and try to look for more of a proven center fielder, maybe like a Jason Hayward kind of type that is going to be coming from the St. Louis Cardinals. But Jacob, what do you think? Do you think the Chicago Cubs should re-sign Dexter Fowler?
I do think they should resign them. He's not a star, but he's evolved into a nice leadoff man for the Cubs. He's a great center fielder. I wouldn't say he's a Gold Glove caliber this year, but he's definitely not a liability on the defensive end, and he's done a good job hitting homers this year. He's really good at driving in runs, generating runs. I think he scored upwards of 90 runs this year, which is all you can ask for from your leadoff man. On top of that, the Cubs really don't have anyone in their farm system as of right now to replace him. Of course, you said we could be going for the trade market, but I know with
free agent market.
Sorry, thank you. Free agent market. I think Theo Epstein is trying to keep everyone in-house and trying not to go too deep into free agency. I know we're focusing on pitchers for free agency this year. I have a feeling the Cubs are going to sign a big name in the offseason for pitching-wise, but I think they keep Dexter Fowler, a nice, fair offer for him for what he's done for the team.
Yeah, you mentioned Dexter Fowler has hit a lot of home runs this season as the leadoff hitter, which was actually the number on that was 17 home runs in 2015, which is his career best. So it's kind of going to be interesting. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm right. 17 home runs. And then he also has 149 hits, which is both career highs for Dexter Fowler. So he's kind of having a career season here, which is kind of maybe would hinder the Cubs from bringing him back, especially because most of his time has been spent in Colorado, where Colorado has been known to produce really good hitters. So I'm not sure. He might have hit his peak this season, might be going down. So it might be wise to let him walk, let him get his money, and then bring in somebody else to replace him. So let's move on to some NFL. So surprisingly, there has been 5 undefeated teams through Week 6, which is the first time in NFL history there has been 5 undefeated teams through the first 6 weeks, which are the Cincinnati Bengals, Carolina Panthers, Green Bay Packers, New England Patriots, and the Denver Broncos. So let's go through and just talk about which team is maybe the strongest out of them. Jacob, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I think the Packers are the strongest team, and I say that because Aaron Rodgers is once again, year in after year out, it's not really a surprise anymore. He's playing like the best player in the league. He's willing this team to win. I mean, he's got some quality wins so far this year. Seahawks. He pulled out a good win last week against the Chargers, who are no slouch. Rams. So he's beaten some decent teams this year. I think we're going to find out what this team really is made of this next 2 weeks, because they do play the undefeated Broncos, and then the undefeated Carolina Panthers these next 2 weeks. So we're going to see what happens there. I think Aaron Rodgers goes in. He's on the road both those games. I think he goes in there and pulls out 2 wins and reaffirms that the Packers are, if not the best teams in the NFL.
So I kind of going to lean towards the New England Patriots here. Tom Brady was supposed to be suspended for the first 4 games, which was overturned, so it doesn't necessarily surprise me that they are 5-0 so far. If Tom Brady was not suspended, they would have definitely at least had 1 or 2 losses in there, but the Patriots definitely look like the best team in the NFL so far. They are averaging 125 passing yards a game, 97 rushing yards per game, so they're a very balanced team. They're putting up numbers like there's no tomorrow, and they're absolutely dominating their opponents so far. They did have a good game against the Colts, which was in Indianapolis, but they were able to handle them easily coming in the second half, and the Colts were really no match after halftime. And Joel?
For my best team this season, I have to go with the New England Patriots. And I look at that simply because look how they've incorporated no-name running backs into their lineup in recent years. Best example of that this year is Dion Lewis. Guy hasn't seen action since 2015, and he's been a pretty significant part of that offense. Yeah, he's only got 201 rushing yards, only a couple touchdowns, but he's also been used as a receiver a few times. I think he's just the way they fit players into that team is very impressive. They've had a very solid start to the season. Tom Brady looks as good as ever, and don't underestimate even though they won the Super Bowl last year, a lot of people are saying, maybe that was tainted because of Deflategate. I think they're a little bit angry about that, and they turn that into motivation. So this is a team that I don't know if they'll go undefeated, but I think they're well on their way to heading back to another Super Bowl should they stay healthy.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if of all 5 of these teams did not end up being undefeated at the end of the year, because it's extremely difficult to go undefeated throughout the regular season. I think only 2 teams has done it, the New England Patriots of 2007, if I'm correct, and then obviously the Miami Dolphins, who ended up winning the Super Bowl. So then the best teams in the NFL are, from what we think, are the New England Patriots and the Green Bay Packers. So let's go through and talk about who we think are the worst undefeated teams so far. So Joel, why don't you give us your worst undefeated team?
I think I'd have to start, and I'd say the Denver Broncos. I think the defense is carrying that team. I think it's kind of helped make up for Peyton Manning's mistakes so far this season. I think it's pretty simple to say things haven't gone exactly the way he wanted them to go this season. 7 touchdowns, but 10 interceptions. Those are stats we're used to seeing from his brother, not from him. But I think this is a sign Peyton Manning's at the end of his career. I mean, he could pick it off 3 times against the Browns, which I know is an improved team in recent years, but still, they're not a playoff level team. For the way Manning struggled, it's scary. The defense can't bail him out every game.
Yeah, the Peyton Manning definitely seems to be slowing down. It wouldn't be surprising if he maybe retires after this year or next year. He doesn't look like the same quarterback that he used to be. My worst team would definitely be the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals haven't exactly. They look like a really good team. Don't let me down, but their defense hasn't exactly been playing like an undefeated team. Their offenses look great under Andy Dalton, throwing to AJ Green, and they've looked absolutely explosive. But so far, they're only in the middle of the pack defensively. They have 5 turnovers, which isn't horrible, but also isn't great for an undefeated team. They're letting up 370 yards up per game, and they just don't look that great defensively right now. I wouldn't be surprised if when they start playing when they end up playing like maybe the Steelers at home when they get their first loss, because the Steelers look absolutely great right now, especially their defense, but they just don't really look like an undefeated team right now. And Jacob?
I'm going to have to go with the Carolina Panthers. I look at how good a team is or how overrated or underrated a team is based on their strength of schedule. And when you look at the Panthers' strength of schedule, they haven't played one team this year with a record over 500. You look at teams like Texans, Saints, Buccaneers, all have 2 wins. They're 2-4 currently, along with the Seattle Seahawks. And then the only team that's not 2-4 are the Jaguars, who are 1-5. So I like Cam Newton. I'm happy to see him succeeding a couple years in now to his NFL career. I was always a big proponent of him in college, and just watching him play, he looked like he could be a star in the NFL, and it just hasn't worked out so far. So it's nice to see the team getting wins and getting recognition throughout the league. But they need to start playing some teams that have winning records to convince me that they're the best, or to convince me that they're worthy of their 5-0 record so far. And of course, they have played the Eagles next week, which will be a good game, and then they got the Packers coming up in 2 weeks after that. So we're going to see how this team responds to quality opponents rather than just taking care of the bottom feeders of the league, which all good teams should be doing.
Well, if I could throw it in real quickly, though, I would have to say, though, there's any chance that these teams, like one of the teams that might stay even close to undefeated, it's probably going to be the Panthers. You look at the rest of their schedule, honestly, like I know you got the Packers, but after that, for the most part, this is a pretty favorable schedule for them. They're facing several injured teams. So, I don't know. The Panthers might end up with a good record, but we'll see how good they really are in the postseason.
Yeah, if they get through this Packers game, they play the Eagles, the Colts, and the Packers. Then after that, the only team that's over 500 currently would be the Atlanta Falcons, who they played twice, actually. But other than that, they have a very easy schedule, which might end up letting them win the NFC South rather easily. So, one last question before we end the podcast is: what is the biggest surprise in the NFL so far this season? And would you like to start off, Joel?
Biggest surprise, boy. I mean, one of the things that's really shocked me so far has been the sharp decline of Peyton Manning. But I guess we could say we expected this a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But honestly, to me, the biggest surprise has been the struggles of the Baltimore Ravens. They're 1-5 right now. They lucked out in their only win because of kickers. But I knew this team was going to struggle a little bit. But I really didn't think they were going to be this bad, to be honest. It seems like Joe Flacco hasn't had much help out there. Injuries haven't really helped either. Bashard Perriman hasn't played a game yet, so it's lost a big wide receiver right there. Steve Smith's, trying to carry all that on his own. But that defense, as soon as they lost Terrell Suggs, it's been a completely different unit. So I don't know. It's kind of surprising to me how bad they started.
Yeah, the Baltimore Ravens are a kind of big surprise. I think it's just the injury bug that hit them, and Terrell Suggs was a huge, huge loss to that defense, and it doesn't look the same without Suggs. My biggest surprise is definitely going to be the struggles of the Seattle Seahawks. Currently 2-4 right now. I know they came back from a bad start last season and was able to make the Super Bowl, but the defense just does not look the same. They let up 31 points to the Rams in Week 1. They let up 27 points this past week to the Bengals. They lost. To the Panthers. They let up 24 points to the Bengals. They just don't look like that shutdown defense they used to be. It's probably because they're starting to lose some guys into free agency. But they don't look like a Super Bowl team right now. And I don't even know if they're going to get back to the playoffs because the Arizona Cardinals are starting to run away with that division a little bit because there's nobody in there to compete with them right now. And Jacob.
I think my biggest surprise is the struggles of the Detroit Lions. You look at this team and you think of playmakers on the field. You got Amir Abdullah, the running back. You've got, of course, Megatron, Calvin Johnson, one of the best wide receivers in the game. And then you have one of the top 10, I'd say, quarterbacks in Matthew Stafford thrown to him. And I can't believe the struggles that they've had offensively speaking. I understand they've played some tough opponents, including the Broncos and the Seahawks defense, and of course the Cardinals. But we're looking at point totals of 12 points against the Broncos, 13 points against the Seahawks, 17 points against the Cardinals, and it's very tough. And we saw last week with their one win against the Bears, we saw what they can do to average defense, and I would like to see them put up more points against teams that they should be beating. So, for example, they lost to the Vikings Week 2. They put up 16 points. I'm not sure how you can do that with Matthew Stafford and Calvin Johnson, as your playmakers. They're big play potential guys. They can easily put up 25, 30, 35 points a game. And so I'm surprised they haven't shown that yet.
I kind of think they have a little bit of their running back situation isn't very stable right now.
Right.
Once they're able to figure out that true number one running back and get that inserted and take a little bit of heat off of Calvin Johnson, the Detroit Lions will be a little bit better.
I gotta say real quick, Jacob's saying that Matthew Stafford is a top 10 QB in this league. I don't know. I'm not sure about that.
I don't think I would call him a top 10 QB. He hasn't done anything. Has he? He only had maybe one playoff win, if that.
I can't remember how many times he's made the playoffs, if at all. Honestly.
He's made at least twice, I believe, because he lost to the Cowboys last year, and then I remember them playing. I think they played the Saints another year, so they have at least made it twice. But Calvin Johnson has not performed in the playoffs, and he hasn't been able to win that division yet. Even though the Packers are in the NFC North with the Detroit Lions, but Matthew Stafford has not done anything to prove to me that he is a top 10 quarterback in this league.
I think I completely agree with you there. He got benched in the week before this past weekend. So, 10 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. He's always thrown a lot of picks, but, boy, it's not a good start. He only threw 12 last year in 16 games, 9 this year through 6. I mean, we talked about early in his career, obviously, he had the injury problems. But he's been healthy. He's played 16 games for 4 straight years. He's played all 6 so far this year. It's time for him to really step up.
So, Jacob, would you like a rebuttal?
Yeah, I'd like to just point out some of his stats totals. So, for example, you mentioned that he had 4 straight years of playing 16 game totals, and those 4 years, produced some yardage totals of 5,000 yards, 4,900 yards, 4,600 yards, and 4,200 yards. So clearly, this guy can throw the ball. He's had at least 20 touchdowns in the last 4 years, including 41 back in 2011. And, he had 22 last year. And, yeah, his picks are a little bit there, but last year he only had 12 picks total to 22 touchdowns, which is, a decent ratio. I'd like to see more touchdowns, but the 12 picks is nice and low, while averaging 266 yards a game, putting him at 4,200 yards. So I think if I'm hoping it's the O-line struggles, because, Matthew Stafford was a big name coming out of college, first-round draft pick, big name. It's sad to see this line struggling, because they had so much potential with him and Megatron. It hasn't worked out their way. So I think if you look at pure potential and just pure talent, I think he's a top 10, but it obviously has not manifested itself yet in him.
Yeah, Go ahead, Joel.
Tough to say there. Yeah, I mean, look at someone like Aaron Rodgers. He's only had 2 years of over 10 interceptions. So I mean, and someone like Tom Brady, he's had his fair share too. The most he ever threw in a season though was 14. Yeah. Stafford threw 19. He's thrown 17, 16. He threw 20 his rookie year.
Yeah, but I'm not. Yeah, you can't compare Aaron Rodgers though to Matthew Stafford. Aaron Rodgers is his own.
I mean, it's in that same competition though. If you're saying he's in the top 10, these are the guys he's competing with.
I guess you can say that. I would consider Rodgers and Brady in the top 5. It's very up there. I'd say top 2, top 3. I consider the gap between the top 5 and the bottom 5 pretty significant in the NFL. That's why I consider him a top 10.
Well, let's have a top 10 quarterback discussion another day. We are going to wrap up this Sports Heaven podcast, which is the first in the Afternoon Delight series. We'd like to thank you for listening, and don't forget to check out our blog, sportsheaven.sportsblogs.com, and to like us on Facebook, Sports Heaven, and to follow at Sports Heaven 2 on Twitter. Thank you again for listening, and hopefully you can tune into some more podcasts. Thank you, and bye-bye.